Well, hello, everybody. I believe we are live, and it's Coach Elise, and I am Coach Diana, and we're here on Leslie's public Facebook page tonight.
Mhm.
And our topic for tonight is how to live well when your spouse is not changing. And so we're so happy to be here with you tonight. And if you're out there, I'm going to switch over to my comment section so I can see that you're out there. Just let us know that you're live and you're with us. And then as soon as we get enough people confirming that, we'll go do a deep dive into
Mhm.
this topic. And we're so happy to engage you about this because it's a difficult space to be, don't you think?
Yeah, I really do. It really is. I think that I know from my experience with so many of my clients. I mean, their heart's desire is to stay and to stay well. They really have no desire to leave a relationship, and for so many reasons. We're going to talk about those reasons tonight. But wow, we've got a lot rolling in. Let's just say hello. Hi from Arizona and from Connecticut. Good evening, ladies. See you Facebook Live. Well, hello. Thank you, Janice. I appreciate that. We do need to hear that sometimes. Hi, see you all. Good, wonderful. I think some of our viewers that do check in with some frequency know that we have to kind of get the feedback from you all to get started. We have to know that you're here, and we see that Facebook and YouTube is both showing up. So we do welcome you, and this is a hard topic. Staying well, Diana and I have talked about that, about staying well is no doubt a challenge. We know it's the heart of many of you, but it is a challenging, especially when your spouse has no desire to do anything different. What does that look like? What does that mean to
Yeah.
press into that? So, yeah. Uh,
Okay. We've got people from all over the U.S. I don't see anybody outside of the country yet. Oh, I see somebody from my home state of Ohio. Hi, Sarah.
yeah. Hi, Sarah, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And so, any of you Georgians would love to feel a little home love there. Would love that.
Yeah.
So anyway, welcome everybody. Whether you're from Ohio or from Georgia, we appreciate you being here. We've really count it a privilege that you would join us tonight. And so we hope
Absolutely.
it's
And it looks like
worth your
we're,
time.
yeah. Okay.
Yay!
Yep.
We have an
We're
Atlanta.
winding, we're winding down summer, aren't we all?
Right.
And so as we look forward, we're thinking about, oh gosh, what can I invest in for the fall
Yeah.
in terms of myself? So we're hoping tonight you're going to just kind of be all here with us
Right.
and take a pause from whatever's in the background and really engage in this conversation with us because we really do want to know what
Right.
your experience is like and to provide you with some encouragement and some information that might help you along this journey. If you fit with this topic, or maybe if you have been here and you're not really still in that situation, but you really resonate with what it was like to stay. Hi, Jackie. I see somebody else from Ohio. Love my Ohio people. We endure the winters together. My friend Elise doesn't have to suffer like we do. Not in Atlanta.
Not doing that.
So I want to talk about this concept of, well, we use the term here today, living well.
Hmm.
Sometimes I've heard the term staying well.
Hmm.
And sometimes for me, I have to be honest with you, Elise, that's an oxymoron.
Hmm.
Because to stay in a destructive relationship doesn't sound like a place of wellness to me.
Right.
Because I feel like it can be so hard on your mind, your
Hmm.
body, and your spirit to
Hmm.
stay well in a destructive relationship. It can be lonely, it can be isolating,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it can feel fake as well because you're in a relationship that is not really what it's intended to be and what you expect it to be. And how do you do that
Hmm.
and not erode who you are? It's a
Right.
fine line to walk.
Right.
And, it can evoke some real feelings of sadness and frustration.
Hmm.
And so we want to know from you what your experience is like if you're in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways we can do this is, Diana, you mentioned it can be lonely and isolating. It can feel fake.
Yeah.
It can invoke feelings of sadness and frustration. And if you have experienced those things, was there another one along with that, Diana? Were those?
Sadness, frustration, loneliness, isolating. You know me, Elise, I'm a body person. I
Yeah.
am such a sensing person that before I can really register what's not okay in relationships with me, I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean just emotionally feel it, I mean physically feel it. And
Right.
so for me, being in a destructive relationship with no matter who it is, if it's your partner or a work colleague or
Mm-hmm.
a family member,
Right.
maybe a parent, um, I notice you carry that. You may carry it in heaviness. You
Mm-hmm.
may carry it in, quite
Brain fog.
frankly,
Kind of talk about
oh,
brain fog,
yeah,
right?
excellent. Brain fog. I notice stomach upset,
Right.
gastrointestinal stuff, acid reflux, all of those things. And
Right.
so it does take a toll on you. So, yeah, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is it Nettie is saying feelings of abandonment. And I see depression,
Right.
certainly depression, emptiness and loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would ask the ladies. We did this earlier today. Jen and I did a Facebook, and she asked this question in this form, and I thought it was really cool. And maybe we can ask it tonight as well.
Yeah.
Is if you have experienced some of the things that Diana has been mentioning here, and we've been talking about already, put a
Mhm.
one just out there. Either a yes or no or a one. Just put a number one. Just so we don't have to go into a lot of words or anything like that. Just say that's your way of saying yes, or two if no, you've not experienced that, right? So look at all the ones,
Mhm.
yeah, that you've
Yeah, we've got a lot of ones.
experienced that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
thank
you really resonate with this topic.
you. Yeah.
And I don't know how many of you agree with me that staying well requires a lot of energy. And I don't know, Elise, would you like to redefine what staying well really looks like? Would you like to help me with that?
You mean no? You go ahead. I have Dinah's notes. Like I know what it is, but we'll go ahead. If there's a real definition, yeah, let's.
No, I don't have a
Oh,
real
oh,
definition.
oh, okay. My
Well,
apologies.
we've talked about this. We have
Yeah,
talked about, and ladies, when we talk about staying well, what
right,
we really mean is
right.
getting strong.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And that requires a whole shift in your perspective about who you are and how you will do life in destructive relationships. And
right,
obviously, it's easy to step away from a destructive relationship if it's an extended family member
right,
or if it's a work colleague. We have some options and some choices with that. But if
right,
it's your partner and you come home to your partner
right.
and your partner is unpredictable, destructive,
Mm,
how do you live well? What are
mm-hmm,
some of the things that you've discovered
mm-hmm,
that enable you to be strong
mm-hmm.
in who you are in that relationship? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to ask you what you're noticing.
Yeah. Me personally, or
Well, our audience and you, Elise, do you have some examples?
yeah, and I think I have shared this with many of you that while I absolutely have people who are so difficult, and I would qualify them as destructive in my world, and have experienced some people that I can diagnose them because I'm a therapist. They haven't been diagnosed as narcissists, but
Yeah.
just having experienced that confusion and that disorientation and never feeling steady. But one of the things that I think has been helpful, and even Diana, as I've talked with you sometimes, is this place of acceptance of
Mm.
of if I'm going to stay well in this relationship, and it's not my marital relationship, but others outside of that, is if I'm even going to choose to stay in this relationship, I have to basically say what I may be asking or what I may be thinking may not be unreasonable, but it may be unrealistic. I'm not going to get that. So how do I step into that? How do I own that? How do I, one of the hard things is that we've talked about sometimes is that how surprised we are over and over and over again. Like, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe, like how many times can I say, I can't believe they did that? And yet they did it again. And Diana, to your point, I think one of the things that you're saying is that we have to move into that mindset of acceptance, of saying, this is the relationship that I am, that I'm not always going to feel, as sound as I would with a healthier relationship. I am going to be on my toes a little more often. I'm in a thunderstorm. I don't know if you can hear that or not.
I heard it.
Yeah. It looks like it's bright with my scenery, but that's not true if I take away the scenery. But yeah, that we can, we feel so alone in this. And so, but moving into this place of not accepting the behavior, but accepting the truth and reality of where I am. And this is a part of the core, walking in core strength, what we're fixing to, the class that we're fixing to start here in September, is that's one of the core principles to see, is that I'm committed to truth and reality. And if you're going to choose to stay well, then you have to be committed to, this is my truth and this is my reality. I cannot be fooled over and over and over again. We must learn to accept it and expect it, right? Right? That this is what reasonable is going to look like. And so, yeah.
You bring up a very strong point, Elise, and one of our very first points is, we're stepping into Walking Core Strength, which is our group coaching program, and staying well, living well, and strong has everything to do with walking in core strength.
Yes.
And you're speaking about clarifying your expectations and walking in the truth.
Right. Yeah. Let me look at some of the chat. At times, may have to look at the chat through my glasses. At times it's so tiring, or tired of feeling weary, because even as you accept, you don't really entirely move on. If you stay, hey, Sunny Days, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. That there is a place of weariness, but if we make that decision to stay well, so we really have to say, what does it mean, being genuine and holding true to myself and my best self, even when my marriage doesn't always bring out my best self. Like and walking in core strength of kind of understanding what is my best self, because I think a destructive relationship can really tear that down and tear it apart. Right, Diana? It's like sometimes that is hard to hold on to. But being committed to that, what is my best self? What are my values? What are my strengths? What are my, character qualities that I want to embrace? Who has God created me to be? And can I grow, right?
Yes.
In this relationship, knowing that, instead of always placating or leaning to or trying to struggle with. It's like, really having this kind of healthy detachment in a way that says, you are you, even though I don't always like you, but I'm not going to try to change you.
Yes.
If I stay, I'm going to begin to embrace you are who you are. And I have to focus on who I am. And it's likely that person doesn't like always who you are as well. That's why there's a lot of conflict and contention. So what is one again? One is, for those of you who are just coming on, and that let me just say, one is kind of some of the things that we're describing, even when you're trying to stay well, what it can feel like to be in a more destructive relationship, even though we're trying to stay well. It can feel lonely and isolating. Sometimes we feel fake. Oh, everything's fine. It looks, it's
right.
Great. And we just know good and well it's not, right? And it can evoke feelings of sadness, depression, frustration, anger. And if you have experienced that, press 1. So that's what 1 is. So I
want to ask a question, Elise. We have a comment in the chat that it can take a destructive toll on your body.
Yep.
It can go along for quite a while. So I want to ask a question about that.
Okay.
Why do you think that's so? Why do you think it takes a destructive toll on your body? And for those of you who are watching, if you would answer that question, why do you think it's so difficult, and how and just your perception about how it affects your body?
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
What goes into that makes it so difficult? Because we want to give you some tips to kind of help that not be so wearisome?
Mm-hmm.
So what might stress?
Right.
And so
Right.
what is stressful about being heart racing, heavy mind spinning, can't focus or think, self-care is difficult? Why
Tension.
isn't that so?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yeah.
isn't it so? Our bodies aren't created for. Okay, so one of the things, you know me, I'm always learning and studying. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that is true is that if you're in a relationship with someone who's not changing, and I'm assuming by all of your ones, that means they're destructive,
Mm-hmm.
they are unpredictable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the things that we do, we kind of sometimes act like a prey, like a prey. We act, what is the other? We're a preyed upon
Mm-hmm.
animal.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like if you're a zebra, if like you're a zebra in the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of just grazing, but you sense some danger lurking. So maybe he comes home and the lion is in the room, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you're activated and you're wondering what's next. How do I take care? How do I stay safe? What's going to come at me? And so your nervous system is activated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's an okay thing. And that's how we're meant to survive if that happens occasionally. That's
Right.
just how the animal is.
Right.
And when the danger has ceased, it goes back to grazing in the field. But if you live in that environment where that system is consistently triggered, it takes a toll on your system. But you and I both know, Elise, it's not just our physical body that it takes a toll on. And you even said that earlier in our call. It takes a toll on who we are authentically meant to be. Why
Mm-hmm.
is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what you were saying, Diane, I love that example of this, um, one, we weren't really created, animals were, but we weren't created to live with that much fear,
Yeah,
at all times. And so we aren't, we really weren't created for that chronic fight and flight mode, right? We were created to have some peace and calm in our life, and that we have the ability to move into fight and flight. But when we're always dysregulated and always in that fight and flight, do I flee right now, or do I fight right now? Right. And so when there's never a place, it's almost like if I had my foot on the gas. Have you ever been somewhere and you accidentally, like, I've turned around and this is years ago when I had smaller children in the back seat, I've turned around, to touch them, and I accidentally had my foot on the gas.
yeah,
Right. And the engine's revving real high and you can hear it and it's almost screaming. Right. Why? Because the car wasn't designed to have the accelerator on in park. It was meant to be at idle. Right. And
yeah.
so in our original creation, we weren't meant to be at full throttle, anxiety, stress, worry, concern, under threat. Am I going to get attacked? Right. And so there's, if that's not our original creation, it's going to wear quicker than those who have, a more balanced resting place. And so, I think you're bringing that up about the animal is so true. I mean, they have survivals, and we know how to survive as well, but we weren't created to be on constant threat and alert,
No.
right?
So what do you do when you're in that environment? And I see some answers in the chat.
Yeah,
Um,
let's talk about it.
one was, where was it now? Our bodies can't pretend it's all okay. So you tell yourself the truth. It's not okay, right?
Right.
And I see one comment here is I made a decision to leave in order to stay well because I'm unable to communicate with someone who is so angry. So if you're in that situation and
Mm-hmm.
you have an angry person, the first thing that we want you to do is tell yourself the truth. What is possible and what's not possible. I cannot communicate with an angry person. Clarify your expectations. Cease striving and stop communicating. Stop trying to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to go places where you're hitting against a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times that's where stress and exhaustion occurs because we think we can create change.
Right. Right.
So the first thing we need to do is realistically assess the situation and step into the truth of who this person is. That's simple behavior observation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Keep going.
So,
Or let's engage just for a second. Okay.
okay, let's see.
And also would love in just a few minutes to be able to, I haven't done as many Q&As as I've wanted to in the past. And so when we hit the top of the hour, let's start engaging in some, question and answer. But break the trauma response and work on breaking trauma bond. Yeah, Suzanne, thank you for that. Yeah.
So, you want to speak to
Inflammatory
that?
digestive issues. Yeah. They do not care about you. They care about themselves and what they can get from you. That can also be very true, except that this is who he chooses to be.
Exactly. Make a list who he chooses to be. I can't communicate with an angry person, right?
Right.
His behavior indicates there's no care for me,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Telling ourselves the truth so we don't keep. I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't believe it. Like I get hit that wall like 15 times and I still think someone's going to be different and
Right.
they're not.
Right.
So for me, I'm a little thick that way. And I remember I worked one time, and this was in a different capacity, ladies. I worked with a boss who was a man who was very, very narcissistic. And a friend of mine told me, Diana, write down what you know is true about human nature, specifically this person in general. And I posted a little post-it on my computer that said, um, the heart is deceitfully wicked, who can know it? And I posted some bullet points about what I knew to be true about this person and what I could expect for their behavior. So I didn't have that high and low. I knew what I was dealing with, and the rug couldn't be pulled out from underneath me so easily
Mm-hmm.
because I stepped out of my innocence and my expectation that something would be different. I
Right.
learned,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alexa, developed stomach ulcers. Only nightly melatonin has kept them at bay. Glad you found something that helped. No resolution to anything. Difficult to function with someone working against you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing is that we want to say that staying well, is incredibly challenging. And there are some cases where maybe you don't have to live on the same floor with them, you don't have to live in the same bedroom with someone, you don't have to eat with them as frequently, you don't have to. And at the very end, we're going to talk about reasons why people do stay well. And we want you to know that, ladies, this is not a subject that we and anyone, like, we want to say you can't stay well. We don't know that. We don't know the heart and the body makeup of everyone here. We are saying that it is very challenging. And, with very, very destructive people, it's most challenging, no doubt, versus just difficult people. And a lot of us have very difficult people, but destructive is certainly another whole level. It's really about power and control. So someone's always trying to, in a sense, take you down. They're always being aggressive against you. And so that would be certainly a greater challenge. And we always encourage anyone, if you feel like you need to or would like to or can choose to stay well, we want to support you in that in any way that we can. But we also want you to know that some of the real things of making that choice.
Absolutely.
Do you still hear that? I'm in a pretty big lightning storm, so if the lights go out, you know what happened to me.
Oh no, I'll be on my own.
Right. You will be on your own. So right now, should I stay well in this room? I don't know. With the lights on, no, it's fine. But
So, couple things you mentioned, Elise, staying well and it means staying strong authentically in who God's created me to be. So I'm going to be authentic.
yes,
And so I
yeah.
want to ask the question, what would being authentic entail for you in your situation? What would be different? What would you no longer do? And what would you choose to do?
If you were authentic,
You mentioned some things, Elise. You said, I won't eat with you. I don't sleep in the same bedroom. So we've given you some hints. But in
right?
your situation, if I was going to be authentic and stop pretending, what would that look like? What would I be choosing to do differently? It might mean I no longer go to church with you because I'm not going to pretend that you're walking with the Lord.
Mm,
What would that be?
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is really like if I'm going to be authentic, I have to know myself.
There you go.
Okay, I have to authentically know myself. Who did God create me to be? Right? I don't think God created any of us to be placaters and pretenders. And so in that moment and not in that moment, but in that chronic moment, over and over again, can I say, that's not me? That may be you. You may have that thought. I don't have that same thought.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have that same belief system. I know that's hard for you and I when we disagree. But I can't change me. And I don't think you want to change you. Now what do we do? And somebody wrote earlier about not having solution. Oftentimes there's not a chance they're going to give you a solution.
No.
Right?
No. No, they're
They
not.
solution. They need a solution. But how do you continue to say, that's not me? That's not authentically me. And it's hard when you don't want to embrace me. And the truth is, I don't really want to embrace authentically you. Can we continue to do this? And we can see how hard, some of this honest with yourself and others.
Yeah. So, you ask yourself, is this person change able?
Yeah.
Or change willing? And if the answer to that is no, what does that mean for me? If this person's not change able / willing,
right.
Now what?
Right. Oh, Nancy, I mean, some of these other comments to what you asked, what would authentic entail? I drove a different car at all times. Yes. Yeah. Like if you have a road rager, you are chronically frightened, you can't relax in the car, or we've, certainly known people who, that's their, prison cell almost. They get in the car and somebody starts raging in the car. And so, yeah, absolutely drive a different car. Honest with yourself and others. Thank you, Suzanne. Communication level at a 5 and 4 only. Laureen, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I'm only going to communicate you at this level. And I don't know if that means volume or that means intensity or, how deep I'm going to go. But I like even that you kind of have, numbers to describe that. You're not going to get a 10 out of me. And I'm not going to let you scream at me at a 10. You can go ahead.
If I'm no longer pretending, if I'm honest with myself and other people, Elise, what does that mean? What does that mean for me socially?
Right.
What does that mean for me at family gatherings? How do I walk in truth and be obedient to the Lord and yet not pretend? So it may mean that I adjust some of my behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that might look different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I don't choose to do family gatherings any longer. I don't know.
Yeah, Melinda, I think you make a good point. Sometimes you can't be completely honest with others. It can be more detrimental. I agree. And I think, certainly, the population at large of the women that we work with, I think you have to be very wise in discerning who you tell, especially those, who I know would love you that are in the church, but don't always agree doctrinally.
Absolutely.
Right. And so they may not be experiencing what you experience relationally. And so they wouldn't understand. And so, that's not always a safe place. And so, ladies, let me caution you or certainly invite you to think about, is this person safe? Right? How much of, I always use the kimono, how much of the kimono do I open up, right? Is there just a little bit? How much do I let others really know? And I think that that's a really important piece. There are safe people, but make sure before you, really are wide open, honest, that this is a safe person. This is a person that will hold and be a burden bearer with you. And I think that that's part of staying well. Do you have good burden bearers that understand and can walk the distance with you? And so, yes, as our support, I get to choose how much to disclose. Yeah, you absolutely do. Be very, very careful. And then, so Linda's, I've made that mistake too many times. Well, I think we've all made that mistake. And let's just learn. Let's just learn from it. Let's get wise. And that's, if we're going to stay well, we've got to be wise. Is this the time I speak, or is this the time I'm quiet? Can I be more authentic? Do I, just, and not necessarily pretend. I don't have to pretend anything, but I don't have to, be a wide open door of honesty.
Well, it's no one's business. I get to choose what I share with someone, but I can still walk honestly
Yeah,
without telling everybody what I'm doing.
right.
I
Exactly.
get to be honest internally, right? But I don't have to give verbiage to everybody about why I'm choosing to be honest and what's going on in my life.
Right.
You own your own information and you get to put up that shield and protect yourself with what you share. That was very well said. I'm so glad you covered that, Elise.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I have a great,
There
go
was
ahead.
some,
Go ahead.
I might have passed it up.
Mm.
So go if there's something you're thinking.
Well, I
Um,
think one of the other things, and I heard you touch this, and I'm just kind of glancing at our notes a little bit, looking to
okay.
God for your value and worth, not Him, right? And we talked about that so much in our people pleasing class, is that so oftentimes we idolize not only our spouse, but we idolize marriage, right? And that is the end all be all, right? It's a beautiful covenant between two people, but when the covenant is broken, how do we manage that? What do we do with that? Doesn't mean that we have to divorce, but we do have to step in the reality of a broken and fractured covenant. And so, and one of the things that, when we talk about worth, and I think our world and our culture at large talks about that you are worthy, or, all this. And I want to, at least from Elise Berry Hill's perspective, is to say, from Coach Elise's perspective, is that no one can deem me worthy. One of the things I love about being in a relationship with all of our coaches and Leslie is that I love, certainly, when someone compliments, or when someone says that, you do that so well, or, that talk about our value, our talents, and how sweet that sounds. And we exchange that all the time with one another. But no one can deem me worthy except for Christ and Christ alone, right? The cross has deemed me worthy, right? When I accept Him. And certainly God Himself has said that you are worthy. He placed His hand on my head and on your head and deemed you worthy. And we can let go of that. We can, He will never let go of that, but we get confused when people tear us down and tear us apart about our worth. But when we look to others for worth, I think we're always going to be disappointed, because we see in them, it's like, how is it that they can deem me worthy? They can tear me down. Can they give me worth? I think we can feel better about ourselves, but our worth is our internal acceptance of who God's created us to be. And are we using that well? So,
Well, there's some work to do around that. I mean, we're saying those words, but
yeah.
what is it? What is it? I mean, that's a job. I think that's a job. We're
Well,
always
if you're going to stay well, you've got to, because your worth is being torn down all the time.
well, yeah, but I mean, think about it. It's we're so human that we
Right.
try to find our worth in physical and material things or people.
Right.
And so I don't know about you, Elise, but for me, I have to meditate on the word
Right.
and really kind of soak in who God says I am. And I really have to pray about that and ask God to change my heart, because I can't do it myself.
I agree.
I'm always trying to get my worth in other ways. If it was up to me, and thank God for the Holy Spirit who's within me, you know. And
Right.
so I want you to know that we're not saying this is easy.
Right.
It is an intentional path
Right.
of
Right.
sitting at the feet of Christ and saying, "Show me who I am in your eyes."
Right.
And it's a realignment, and really that is the work that we do, and whether we're doing it in individual coaching or whether we're doing it here on lives or in our group coaching classes, we are asking you to refocus where you are looking
Right.
and to look within and to take responsibility for what you need to own. And some of it might be your own bad behavior, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whatever. But there are, just because you're living with a destructive person doesn't mean that you're not a part of that dance.
Right. Right.
And so we're asking ourselves, and the first thing is to align your heart rightly with truth, like who
Amen.
I am in Christ. And, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of times,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think I was an innocent, I was older in my late 20s, but, I think sometimes we look for fulfillment in marriage and in family and in your partner.
Mhm.
So, rightly aligning our hearts and our expectations puts us in a position to being strong because someone else doesn't have the power now to
Mhm.
own my worth. Only God does.
Mhm. Amen. Yeah. I love that. I hope you embrace that, ladies. Like well, I did, even as Diana was speaking. And one of the I quote this all the time. I should know this the songwriter. It's a really old song. But in the lyrics it says, "Prone to wander and prone to leave the God I love. Come thou fount of every blessing." And prone to wander, prone to leave the God I love. And when we do that, I mean, prone to turn my self-worth towards the car I drive, prone to turn to my self-worth towards the money that's in the bank account, prone to turn my
Mm,
self-worth towards how many likes or dislikes, right? It's so easy. So we're
yeah,
so prone to wander and prone to leave the God we love. And
yeah,
so when we return to that, when we reorient, ladies, if you're going to stay well, our worth has to come from the Lord. And so, and like, pay attention when we've wandered away from that. And when we feel despondent and depressed that, gosh, he doesn't think very much of me, or he tries to cut me down or whatever. It's like, wait a minute, my worth doesn't even come from him. I feel
don't give them
better.
that power. Absolutely.
I feel better when people speak kindness and words
Mhm.
of appreciation and right over me. But my worth doesn't come from that. And that's a hard distinction. And I think in at least from my perspective, we're always a work in progress with that. But some of the other things that you noted, Diana, I would love to speak into because I think they're so great. So when we step into staying well, being strong, right? What are some of the things? And Diana said, be authentic, um, you know, and stop pretending. Look to God for our value and worth, reclaiming our own thoughts, our own dreams, and our own likes. As I said a little bit earlier, this is something that you like, but this is something I like, right? And we have two different likes. I'm not sure how we're going to work that out, but we have two different likes. I certainly can come your way. Would you want to come my way sometimes? If not, okay. But I'm not going to let go of my likes.
Well, and I'm going to speak to that, Elise, because you're much kinder than I am. Um,
No, I'm not.
you are. Like if you're with somebody that you can't even speak to, and they
Right,
don't care about your likes and dislikes, you're going
right,
to own it anyway. You're not going to defer to them and let them
right,
choose for you or
right.
tell you who you are and what they like. So this might be a silent journey. Like Elise just gave you an example of what it looks like to verbalize that. But
Hmm.
sometimes you don't have that opportunity because you know this person
Right,
won't hear you, can hear, whatever.
right.
But you're going to engage on that journey on your own and use your own voice, maybe to yourself, if you can't be heard in this relationship. And that is standing strong and staying well,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And maybe you discover that with some of you have mentioned in the chat safe people, strong friends, supportive
Oh,
others.
oh, that sounds like that sounds like a great.
Okay. What's
Um,
your next point, Elise?
yeah. Well, I thought if we want to, because it's almost 10 after, and I would love to answer some questions around this because I think that a lot of ladies would probably have some questions. So, ladies, if you have some questions, do you have the question tracker, Diana?
I do.
Okay. So, you answer where you want and defer to me where you want. What are some of the questions
Okay.
that have come up, ladies? Would love to hear it.
Hmm. So this is more of a comment. Thank you for this tonight. What if you are not staying well but too afraid? What if you're not staying well but too afraid not to? Due to love slash hope, but mostly fear of his destructive behavior, which is what I'm talking about, payback,
Right.
and those closest to us who don't condone him or me. So, sometimes we're on this secretive journey. We're not going to boldly proclaim it. So You're
Right.
going to accept the truth that things may never change. You're going to let go of those expectations of him changing or being able to hear you, or maybe even being safe. Maybe it is just is what it is. And you're there because you've made a decided choice. You're going to set boundaries with yourself, around yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And that might mean what I'm going to open up about
Right.
and what I won't.
Right.
Maybe where I sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe how much I engage with him, what activities I'll do with him,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
how much I'll let him know my comings and goings,
Mm-hmm.
right? It just depends on your specific situation.
Yes.
But you're also, I think this is a big one, Elisa. Maybe you want to elaborate on this. Is you're not going to allow you're going to allow his emotions to be his emotions.
Yes.
Work toward not allowing those to work toward allowing his emotions to inform you, not affect you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't own his behavior and
Right.
you don't need to absorb it. So it takes some work.
Yes.
I don't think it's 100% possible if you're in that situation to
Right.
totally inoculate yourself, but
Right.
within as much as possible, you
Right.
have to put the shield up.
Right. 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 And so that this question, how do I live well? And that's, I think it's really hard not to own another person's emotions, especially when they're even blaming you for it. You make me so mad, right?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't do such and such, then I wouldn't feel this way, right? And so I think that that's a great challenge. If I always kind of want to respond, if I had that much control to make you mad, don't you think I would have the same control to make you happy, right? And so I'm not in control of your emotions. You're in control of your emotions, and certainly things provoke us, no doubt. But how we respond or react to something still belongs, to me, still belongs to my spouse, right? Your emotions are a personal thing. Your emotions belong to you. Your husband's emotions belong to him. They are his responsibility.
Right.
And I even like those words. You know what? Gosh, you being mad belongs to you. You can choose to be mad. You may be very provoked by what I did, and you choose to be mad. But it's your responsibility how you want to respond.
Right.
Like, and I would go so, I don't know if I would start an argument or not, but I would say, you don't respond this way with your boss when you're mad at him. You don't respond this way in a car when you're mad. You don't go ram the car. You don't, go screaming past somebody. Some people do. You may have a spouse that does, but a lot of people don't, right? And they can get very angry at someone, but in a car, they're way under control. So you might point out some ways like, I see you under control all the time, right? Somewhere you've made a decision that you are allowed to, if I provoked you, let go, right? And so don't take it. Don't take the ownership, of his emotions. So
Yeah.
easier said than done, but don't, I hope you can hear what we're saying is that, oh, okay, well, and then all of a sudden I'm tweaking myself just a little bit more. Maybe if I stop doing this behavior, maybe if I stop doing that behavior, maybe I stop doing, and it's never ending. It's never ending, right? It's because
Yeah.
they are always trying to, they basically said, you're responsible for my happiness. It's not even possible, right? Now, does my spouse bring me happiness? Of course he does. Can he make me angry? Of course he can. But how I choose to respond is how I choose to respond, right? Others can bring about anger and joy and sadness and all kind of frustrations. How we choose to respond is how we choose to respond. Say that 3 times quickly. But this is how we're going to live well. All right, ladies, let's have some questions. Would
All
love to
right.
hear.
I put up unhealthy boundaries because I realized he will never want to do things with me.
Hmm.
I work at home and not only have my church. I work at home and only have my church. How
Hmm.
do women live a healthier, happy life when their partner does nothing but work? How do you feel grateful or blessed? I have planned to divorce, then he switched his work shift from midnight to days. I, I'm going to respond to that, and then I'm going to ask Elise as
Okay.
well to have her thoughts. Um, you have if this is the case and you have a partner that just wants to do life apart from you, you
Mhm.
accept that. And you choose to live your life
Mhm.
independently of him. It's very weird it's like an oxymoron in your brain, because
Mhm.
you're married and we have this idea and this perception of what marriage looks like. It's a
Right.
partnership. We walk together, we're in union, but that's not happening here. And
Mhm.
that's not possible. So letting that go
Mhm.
is just a part of the work to do, is letting go of what's not
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
of what's never been there, of what's not going to change, and stepping into, okay, this is a new me. And what that looks like is building up your resources,
Mhm.
getting your friends, scheduling things you want to do, finding things that bring you joy. And I think most importantly, listening to what God has for you and
Mhm.
trying to follow that lead. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts, Elise?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was listening to you. To be honest, I was also reading the feed that's around really so much of what we are saying.
Yeah.
And let me read two or three of them here just to kind of comment along with what you were saying. Is when the anger is explosive and is used as a fear tool to control you, it is not a safe place. True. He's emotionally unstable and has made it very clear that he's not changing for anyone. I think that that's great information for you, that he's happy with who he wants to be. And, it may not be a healthy, lifestyle or a healthy person, but he's made it really clear. I'm living well now that I don't have to confront this type of behavior because I left. So C. Brown basically says, I couldn't do it well. I could not be me and stay with that. And we want to, accept that, embrace that. But that's not true for everyone or all of our population. It's never ending. It's exhausting. I'm a shell of myself. I try really hard not to react to his rage and belittling. I've learned to enjoy the silent treatment. And
Well, yeah, it's a vacation.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, the truth is, it can be the silent treatment can be a welcome reprieve from all that, unfortunately. And if you can maintain yourself, the best of who you are, and stay well against that, then you can stay well. I think, we all have degrees of what we can tolerate, what our body can manage, what we can accept, how skilled we are in this. And if you can, you can. If you can't, what will you do? What will that mean for you if your body is telling you, I can't do this? If your heart and your soul is telling you, you can't do this, you shouldn't be here. What will that mean for you? And that's just a question that we ask all the time so that you can answer it. We can't answer that for you. What will that mean if you're getting all this information? Um, and so, was there another question?
There is. Yeah. I just want to encourage you, ladies, as you're finding your own self and asserting that and
Mhm.
not kowtowing, there may be a tendency for you to be reactive. And again, you want to think about being responsive and not reactive
Mhm.
and walking in kindness, respect, and truth, right? For yourself and the other individual. Um, and if you need help with that, we're going to practice 6 weeks of it in the 12
Yeah.
week walking and core strength class. That's what we're doing. We're coaching you around that so that you can think, see, I don't know, feel what that's like, and you get to practice that. So here's our next question.
Okay.
Um, how do you handle parenting when he won't step up and help discipline? So I look like the mean parent. I tend to be over STEM because I'm frustrated I have no help. Oh,
Mhm. What's overstim? What's that? Is that
I think it might mean
overstimulated or?
maybe overstressed or
Oh,
stimulated.
okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, well, here's the hard answer is that you can't make him parent,
Yeah.
right? You really can't. And I know that that's not an answer that any of us want. It's like, well, now what? If I can't make him parent, then what?
Yeah.
And, but one of the things that you can say is, what, thanks be to God that your children do have a parent that isn't shy to discipline, that isn't shy, in a sense, to be the bad guy, so to speak, to be the bad cop, while he plays good cop, right? And I know it feels so unfair, but I want you to, in a sense, praise yourself and say thank you, that I have the strength and the fortitude, and I'm willing to step up, right? And if he's not willing to step up, he's not willing to step up.
Yeah.
And over Stern, yeah.
You
Go ahead.
You can't change someone else, and I can see by our questions and the next two questions as well. This is the biggest thing that's hard to wrap your brain around. You don't control him. You can't choose. You can't change what he chooses. You can't change what he does. And so a lot of these questions are aimed at how do I communicate him to get him to understand to stop behaving this way, or what do I do when he's belittling me in public or at church? Nothing.
Right. Walk away.
The Lord will manage your reputation. You manage your behavior and how you respond to it. And that's really what we talk about in core. And what that simply means is you manage yourself in a way that is honest and that is respectful toward yourself and your image of who you're walking to be like, which I believe for most of us, it's Christ. So it really is accepting the truth. What you say, Elise, especially with anxiety, the biggest issue with anxiety is to accept the truth that I really don't have control.
Yes. Listen, we all want a better outcome than we're getting, so to speak. Not necessarily with marriage, with anything. I'd like a better outcome here. I like a better outcome there. And so it is natural and part of our instinct to think about how can I get a better outcome. But when we talk about people on the other side of us, and we start saying, how can I get them to, and fill in the blank, we're going down a bad path, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I want to say, how might I best influence? Because that's the best I can do. Is really, as you were saying, Diane, at the very beginning, is the best I can do is show up as my authentic self, right? And that I can offer a suggestion or be compassionate about a situation. Because even with destructive people, there isn't usually something that we haven't had the same feeling at some point. We've just managed ourselves in a healthier way, right? And so can I be compassionate without rescuing or enabling this person, right? And so, I'm not 100% sure where I was going from there, but I just want to say you have a lot of options, but anytime in your head you are thinking, how do I get someone to do something? We're on a wrong path.
Yeah. I mean, you could speak up for yourself, and I like what Alexa says in the chat. You can say that's not true, that's a lie, but you, and the question here, Elise, is what's the best way to communicate with someone without allowing him to speak degrading and destructive language towards me? You can't, all you can do when someone begins to speak to you that way is set a boundary for yourself that I won't stand with this, and I'm not going to subject myself to this. So you might say to that person, I want to have a conversation with you.
Right.
If this conversation entails you putting me down or degrading me, I'm going to walk away and it's going to be over for now.
Right. Period.
Yeah.
And you have to do that. Whatever you say you're going to do, please, don't say something that you won't follow through with.
Okay. Somebody's asking us a question in the chat, and I think I answered your question as well about how do you react when he's belittling you in public or church. I think for me personally, what I would do with that is bolster myself enough to know who I am and really work on having it not affect me, because the people who are going to believe that don't know me anyway, and they're not my friends. Yeah. And so I would have to work on not being hurt and bolstering some strength and self-assurance and knowing who my people are and who they're not. And I think God uses those situations to show us who our people are as well, And so the question here is, can we explain the goal of staying well when it would be so harmful and predispose the individual toward further harm physically, emotionally, and spiritually? And so this is what I want to say is staying well may not be a destination or a goal for you. Staying well might be a temporary thing that you're doing right now to get strong.
Hmm.
And the environment's so toxic that I have to focus on my own wellness. And it means taking my focus off of what's happening out there and rebuilding myself from the inside out. Walking in core strength, which is the faith walk class that we have, that's built on a lot of core values that Leslie has worked on. And it helps you to put into practice what we're teaching you here.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, staying well may be a position that you're in right now. It might not be a permanent place to live.
Right.
But you won't know that until you start the work of internalizing that strength.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think we have to move, and Diana, that was so good. Really, you have to move from either this hopium state or this, if it would only look different, if you would only do it this way, this, this chronic, we're almost there. We're almost around the corner. If only, we live in this if only world, right?
Yeah.
Instead, I think staying well can be, and or leaving well, to be honest with you, can be with the word because. Because my spouse or my loved one or my employer, or whoever it is, wants to live like this, I will choose this. Basically, I'm going to take that information to inform me of what my next steps may be.
Yeah.
Right. And we're always doing that with, all the time. I mean, when we're driving a car, you've got your blinker on. Now I know what your next step is. When I start to see you turn, I turn, right? We're doing that, that responsively all the time. And so paying attention but changing your thought process a little bit from if only this would happen, if only he would, if only I could, if only, to because puts us in truth and reality. Because this is happening, because this is the behavior I see, because this is the behavior this person chooses, because this is the way this person wants to respond or react to me, because then I will do this. And we can see that the power shifts from kind of this hope to empowerment, that I have something now to act upon.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're going to stay well, who put that in there? That just surprised me. Okay. If we're going to stay well.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I hit a button, ladies. I'm so sorry.
I've never seen that before. Okay.
Those are our notes, Elise.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, they're great notes.
I put them in the chat for our ladies to take with them. I'm sorry to distract you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, that just surprised me. I hadn't seen that come up before. But ladies, think about that. Think about this word, if only changed to because. And you know what? Right now, I would like for you to type that in. I want a few ladies to type that in. Just just thinking, if only changed to because. If only to because. Let's hear it. Let's see it. If only to because. I better get some participants.
So if my only change to because you behave this way, can you fill that in?
Yeah. If only changed to because, how might I be different? And now we can be.
Oh, I love that, Elise.
Yeah. If I only changed to because, how might I respond differently? What might I do differently? What might I choose differently? If I begin to say, because this is who the person that I'm in relationship with is such a challenge, wants to choose this, that means for me this. Because, right? Instead of if only. So ladies, I want you to really begin to listen to yourself. How many times do you say, if only? And in that very moment, you stopped yourself and said, wait a minute, because this is happening, because he is belittling me in front of my friends, I need to what? How does that empower you when you say because? I said, if only he wouldn't do that. I was so embarrassed. If only he wouldn't drink that much. If only he wouldn't say that. If only he would discipline the children more. If only. What if that question was not if only, but if because he chooses not to ever discipline the children, what does that mean for me?
Well, we're getting some good results here, Elise.
Okay.
If only he would be consistently kind has changed to because he won't, I choose safety for me and my children. I wanna say woohoo. I think that's awesome. If only changes to because I might stand up more for myself.
Yes.
Um, because puts a value on my feelings. I
Yeah.
love that. So,
Yes.
ladies, what are your takeaways from all that we've shared tonight? We want you to come away with some, I don't know,
Yeah.
action-oriented footsteps.
Yeah.
What are you taking with you today that's going to bring you vitality,
Right.
um,
So
joy? Go ahead.
Leslie wrote, if only he wasn't indifferent. And Leslie, I want to say, because he is indifferent, what? Empower yourself. Because he is indifferent, I will what?
That's so good, Elise.
Mm-hmm. So but I still want to hear everybody's takeaway as well. Because he doesn't live in truth, I will surround myself with God's truth and truth filled friends. Yes. Thank you, Monica. Yeah. Leslie says, because, yeah, because he is indifferent, I have to stand up. There we go. Thank you.
You ladies got it.
You ladies got it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Takeaways
We're
from
so grateful for you and thank you. Thank
mm-hmm.
you for showing up today and for being with us and for encouraging one another in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Please continue in the chat,
Right. Yeah.
sharing your thoughts and your ideas because you do encourage one another.
Nancy, I love it because they don't want me in their life. I'm free to start a fresh one.
Well,
You're
like
amazing. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah,
yeah,
because yeah, absolutely. If he doesn't want me in their
because
life, I'm free to start a new one. Guarding my heart at all costs, no longer putting myself out there to be hurt. Right.
because he's not changing. I'm choosing to put myself first, stay separated.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne, for being here. I really appreciate it because I'm not cared for. I can care for myself. That's how we stay well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Moving into truth, moving away from if only to because, walking that truth. That's so awesome. Ladies, share with us a little bit of your takeaways. We just, we've shared so much with you all tonight. And again, join us in Walking in Core Strength. Diane and I both coach. All of us coach those classes. We would love to have you join us. Many, many, many of the classes are filling up. There's not a lot of spaces left. If you are free in the evenings, more of our evening classes are open up. We would love for you to join us. There's just 15 in each class, so they are small, intimate classes. The content is taught by Leslie through her video teaching, certainly through her handouts. It is awesome teaching. And then we coach around it in really fun and unique ways where, just like tonight, you can begin to take it and make it your own.
Absolutely. We've got some great spots available. Sometimes you don't want to take your day. We've got some evening spots so you can have dinner. You
Right.
can settle in and
Right.
instead of watching TV, you can do an hour and a half of self work and meet with some wonderful ladies and
Right.
come out.
Like you're not alone at all.
Exactly.
Not alone at all. I hope you will join us. Melinda, thank you very much for being here. And like always, I'm confirmed leaving was the right thing to do despite my beliefs. Thanks, T. Howard. What a precious, picture you have there. Can't wait for tomorrow's live. Yeah, absolutely. My takeaway is to protect myself and my peace. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. Yeah, so much. Thank you. Can't wait for.
All right, ladies. We want to thank you. We're going to let Amanda go home as well. We want to thank her for her support.
Right. We're
We
on
love
East
you
Coast.
all.
Take care. Good night,
Have
Diane.
a great night.